of the currency and relevance of that thinking. And the third issue, and this was a serious matter in a variety of environments in the last year, we need to pay particular attention to the value of awards. And that means that we have to be prepared to be brave about the notion of a spread of standards. Not everybody can achieve the top mark. What is remarkable, if you look at any of the data which is published on marking and assessment in Ireland and elsewhere, this is not just an Irish problem, is the bunching of marks. We are not prepared to look at differentiating standards of achievement. And I think we're going to pay a serious price for this in another domain. And I think there is also a moral and ethical issue attached to it. Because passing examinations is the route, obviously, to transfer and progression. And we now have a remarkable situation that the only barrier to progression is failure. Right? What we haven't looked back at all, or what, in any rigorous way, or what are the standards required to be able to, I suppose, perform and achieve at the next level. It should not be a case that a student discovers that as a result of failing at the next level. The robustness needs to be built into the level at which we're looking at standards in terms of the value of awards. And finally, I want to make a couple of comments on a few national and international developments in the cultural area that I think are going to be particularly significant. Kevin spoke about Hunt this morning, and I'm not going to recover much of his ground. It was a contested space, I'll be polite about it. And there was a very vigorous argument within it, but there was because the people who were involved cared a great deal about it. There are a couple of things in relation to quality which Kevin didn't allude to this morning that I think HECA and the institutes and the universities need to look at particularly. One is the recommendation in relation to a total review of the robustness of the external examiner system. That's long overdue. We here have, almost take it for granted that this is the only system because we took it from the UK. It's not the only system. And for those of you who want to get a sense of the unease that attaches to it in Ireland and outside Ireland, I'd strongly recommend that you read the House of Commons report on universities from 2009, which looked at the business of quality assurance. And the phrase which sticks in my mind was the comment of the House of Commons Committee on the defensive complacency of universities in relation to the evidence base for their standards and the quality of their external examining. Now, I think we need a root and branch review of the external examiner system. There are many other very positive things in Hunt that I think particularly need attention, which perhaps the one that I would particularly like to emphasize is the role of student involvement in quality assurance. The Hunt group met many groups of students, and we got very mixed responses from the students on their knowledge of and participation in the quality assurance systems, which nominally were in existence in a variety of colleges. We need a good deal more persistence and consistency in that area. We also need to do in relation to the students what I'm suggesting in relation to the staff. That is, at the point of entry, students deserve to be given a very full introduction to the quality assurance system of the institution, how it operates and their role in it. And the system which is evolving in Scotland in relation to student involvement in quality assurance is one model that I think we could pursue with interest. The second area, and because Pádraig outlined it all this morning, I'm simply not going to cover that group area. My main concern in the emergence of the new agency is that we have operated in Ireland as usual in a group of silos with our HETEC, FETEC, NQAI and so on. We have made a poor job, for example, at the integration of further education and higher education across the system as a whole in Ireland. And there will be an opportunity here, I think, for private, independent colleges and public colleges, because one of the major concerns of those involved in Hunt was the issue of equity in Irish higher education. Many of those who go into further education are there because that's the route that is available to them at a particular point in time. And the business of access, transfer and progression in a robust way, which provides for the further development of the skills and attitudes and competences of those in further education, I think will be of particular significance. The second thing, which was of huge concern to Hunt and emerged yesterday, for example, at the research prioritisation, is that we have a very large number of people, as you know, unemployed, and that number is going to grow. There will be a fairly substantial increase in the number of people losing their jobs in Ireland in the next 2 years, particularly in the area of traditional manufacturing. We're simply lagging what has happened in the United States, where today they can account for huge swathes, particularly of men, from their mid-30s to their mid-50s, who will never work again because they don't have the opportunities available to them to migrate in different directions. I think that will be the second big challenge, will be for us to look at how we will deal with education in that environment and ensuring that we deal with education which is not educating people in batches by age. We'll be looking at people with different life experience with a huge level already of learning and the way in which we can adapt the system to make it possible for them to move on. Kevin also referred this morning to the business of institutional and system classification and ranking. And I would suggest that in the European context, particularly when in Ireland we wish to engage very strongly in internationalisation of higher education, the system classification as well as the institutional classification will need attention and quality assurance. I strongly recommend that the work which is going on UMAP in the EU, led by Frans van Vochthuis of CHEPS and on which Richard Thorne knows a great deal, is something which every institution in Ireland should become familiar with. It provides an opportunity both to look at what it is an institution identifies as its profile and the areas within which it is willing to set down its stall, that these are the areas it's good at. We cannot be good at all components. And secondly, in relation to the disciplinary classifications which are also going to emerge there, I think in Ireland, if we wish to trade internationally in higher education, we need to follow these very strongly. And finally, on an international development, the European standards and guidelines are, I think, the most crucial document, if I'm going to use one document, that every institution in Ireland should have as bedtime reading. They're being reviewed, the European standards and guidelines at the moment. And there are opportunities for people to both become familiar with what it says and the approach it's taking, and also to look at the way in which it's modifying its approach as a result of a number of years' experience. It strongly influences development within the Irish national system. And I think we have a good deal to learn from the approach which has been taken in the European standards and guidelines. And for anybody moving in the direction of institutional review, delegation authority, in any of those areas, then I think using some of the learning which is available through that ENQA and the European standards and guidelines will help us greatly as we move along. And finally, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak to you here. I feel I've been very prescriptive on some of these things, but they matter greatly. There are a few things that I think are as important as this notion of quality within our system. And the reason they matter so much to me is they matter to the students. There is nothing that is important to a student as being in a position to believe that their awards have value. And that value is something which can be externally validated and which internally they understand and which they accept and which they value for themselves. So at the heart of higher education, I've always had, the strong belief that it's not about a curriculum, it's not about an assessment, it's really about human capacity. It's about the dreams and hopes of people and where it's going to take them in life. I say so, and I think you would understand this, because in an institute of technology, many of my students were the first generation of their families ever to have an opportunity to go to third level, as I was. And I think in those circumstances you understand that access to high quality education can be life-changing and life-enhancing. And that really is what the quality agenda is about. Thank you very much.